got a confession to make. When it comes to movies, I like the deep, and I like the poignant, I like the gritty, I like movies like Gran Torino. Anybody see Gran Torino? Oh, one of the finest gospel parallels at the end of that movie that you'll ever see. Very, language pretty bad. One of the finest gospel reflections that you'll find at the end of that movie. Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, one of Jim Carrey's actual better movies. Truman Show. Boy, I'm not winning over this audience at all. Nemo. Anyway. But a few months ago, a DVD came across my path that really was not for my eyes to see. I was tempted, I fell, and soon found myself watching The Notebook. Now, often what happens is the girls go, oh, and the guys go, oh, whoa. Well, I think one reviewer called it one of modern cinema's most indelible love stories, and another one called it a deep vat of sticky sentimentality. And I think both were right, actually. If you haven't seen it, The Notebook is a story that revolves around two elderly characters in a nursing home. Duke visits Mrs. Hamilton every day and reads her a story from a handwritten notebook. It's a tale of two young lovers from the 1940s. Mrs. Hamilton has Alzheimer's disease. She has lost all memory of her past. She's forgotten who she is. She doesn't even recognize her family when they come to visit. She can't even remember that yesterday Duke came and read the very same story to her that he's reading to her today. But faithfully, every single day, Duke comes along, handwritten notebook in hand, opens it up, and tells the story of these two young lovers every single day. Towards the end of the movie, we see something beautiful happen on the face of Mrs. Hamilton. Right at the end, when he's getting to the end of the story, about how the boy and the girl meet up together after being separated, we see Mrs. Hamilton stop for a moment, and her eyes open. And she says, Duke, I remember now. I remember now. That story, it's about us. And for a few precious moments, she snaps out of her Alzheimer's disease, remembers who she is, remembers who she's married to, Duke. And the story has this wonderful, beautiful ending as a result. In the telling of a special story, Mrs. Hamilton's confusion is interrupted, her eyes are opened, and she starts to return to reality. Friends, we live in a world, we live in a country that is confused about meaning, guidance, liberation, and love. Is there a story that can interrupt our confusion, open our eyes, and return us back to reality? Is there a story? I suggest there is a story. I suggest there is a story that actually answers those 4 questions on our nation's soul, those 4 questions on our souls. And I would suggest it goes a little bit like this. It's the story of a God who imagined earth, moon, sun, and stars before each was created, who designed the atom, the DNA string, and matter's most basic elements. It's the story of a God who sketched dimensions on ozone layers and the mechanics of gravitational forces, who dreamt up air and water, ice and mist, who envisioned leaves and seeds and snowflakes and petals, a God who flung stars across the sky and set all the worlds spinning. It's the story of an infinite God who, in comparison, makes the vastest oceans look like the tiniest of droplets. A God found in outback beauty, peak hour traffic, an Adelaide lounge room, and the Kolkata slum. A God who attends to a shooting star, a Middle East war, a melting ice cap, and a little girl's prayer all at once. It's the story of a God who watches every sparrow, counts every hair, hears every cry, catches every tear. A God who reads every concern, witnesses every dream, knows every secret, and foresees every outcome. A God with whom no cry goes unheard, no pain goes unfelt, no evil is left unrecorded. A God who cannot be surprised. It's the story of a God who controls earth and sky, heaven and hell, proton and neutron, embryo and stem cell. A God by whom all in the cosmos is owned and to whom all in the world is owed. That's the story that can answer the 4 questions in the nation's soul. It's the story of a God whose one desire has always been to have a people for himself. And so he designed the eyeball, the nervous system, skeletal structures and tendons. He cupped his hands and released humanity to love and build and run and sing. He scheduled our days before we were a thought. He saw all that we do, yet he still went ahead. It's the story of a God whom earth, sky, and heavens can never even attempt to try and contain. Yet it's the story of a God who concentrated his greatness into the body of a baby boy. A boy who became a man, and a man who divided time. A timeless human being who gives our story greater detail. For here we see a God with wood shavings in his hair, with dust between his toes and tears upon his cheek. Here we see a God who seeks that one lost sheep, who finds that one lost coin, who welcomes that one lost son. Here we see a God who touches lepers, who heals the diseased, who parties with the rejected, who forgives the vilest sins. It's the story of a God who prays in a lonely garden, is betrayed by the kiss of a friend, and who drags up a cross up a lonely hill. It's the story of a God whose love endures taunts and splinters, spit and ridicule, for whom justice is twisted, yet he says not a word. This is the story of a God who, as angels wept and demons convulsed, had one arm, then the other arm stretched out wide, who had rusty nails driven through both wrists and both feet. The story of a God who was lifted up and exposed to the world as a bleeding, defeated God. And yet it's the story of a God who rebounded 3 days later, defending and defeating sin and death forever. Amen. It's the story of a God who inspires David to write his Psalms and Solomon to build his temple and Nehemiah to rebuild his city and his followers to change the world. It's a story of a God who fills his people, our hearts with life and our mind with ideas and our arms with strength and our souls with joy. A God who lives and acts and works within us according to his good purposes. It's a story of a God who comes to us in the person of Jesus and says, you're looking for meaning. You're looking for meaning in life. You're looking for meaning in life. Come to me. Come to me. I made you. I made you to know me and enjoy me forever. I will show you a little bit about what I see. I'll open your eyes. I'll interrupt that confusion if you'll just come to me. It's the story of a God who comes to us in Jesus Christ and says, you're looking for guidance. Come to me. Come to me. I'll give you a new heart to live out of, new values to live by, my voice to listen to if you'll just come to me. It's the story of a God who comes to us in the person of Jesus and says, you are longing for this world to be liberated from all its evil. You are longing for your own guilt and shame to be washed away. Come to me. Come to me. I'm rebuilding this world. I'm remaking it. One day I'll make it all perfect again. I'll forgive you. I'll heal you. Just come to me. It's the story of a God who in the person of Jesus comes and says, you are hungering for love. Come to me. I'll fill you with an everlasting love that can't be quenched, a love that will overflow out of you to everyone around you if you'll just come to me.